All right, so we are live. So the cool thing, real quick, before we start, is all the comments are going to filter right through here, and you're going to see it from all the platforms. So you'll see it'll be LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. So we'll give it a few seconds for people to come in, and then we will start our dialogue. This is our first time actually going live on LinkedIn, so I don't know, maybe a different audience on LinkedIn, but I believe we should have some frontline and some high-level executive staff. So we'll give it a second for people to start coming in. And obviously it's a live Q&A. And the theme for today is, I think, let's discuss what you should expect on your first day working in a prison and a jail. But let's get through the formality first. Let's meet this wonderful panel that we have on today. So first comes from Facebook group Keepers of Chaos, which, by the way, we are streaming live on Keepers of Chaos. It's one of the venues we're allowed to stream on. We have Russ Hamilton. What's up, Russ?
Hey, Anthony. Glad to be here. It's going to be interesting having one of the live streams go to the Facebook page that I founded and that I'm one of the curators and admins of. So anyway, I'm looking forward to seeing how this goes, and I hope this is going to really help the audience, get really plugged in and more involved and be able to ask more questions. So I'm really jazzed about this opportunity.
Yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun. It's our first time doing this, but we're going to do this every Tuesday. Connie, who's also here, was nice enough to use some skill and make a flyer for us. Hey, Connie, I know this may only be like Connie's second or third live stream, but Connie, what's going on? How you doing?
Oh man, I'm excited. I think it's a good thing that people are able to kind of touch us and get to know us and ask us questions live, and kind of keeps us on our toes too. So I'm excited. I can't wait to get started.
Now, Connie, let's come on, Connie. Gotta promote here, Connie. What's your book that's on the market?
Yes. Okay, so I am Connie Alleyne. I am the founder and president of the Civilian Corrections Academy. I am also the author of The Cage Was Her Cocoon. And, all of that has just been taking life into a whole different direction. So it's awesome, I think, just to be able to use my experiences to help others in their career. So I'm excited.
Yeah, and guys, by the way, if you get a chance, The Cage Was Her Cocoon is The Cage Was Her Cocoon is now available on Amazon. So I'm actually working through this. There it is. And by the way, my book, Inmate Manipulation, is also available. The link will be in the description once the show is done going live. Hey guys, just real quick, the video today is brought to you by Guardian RFID. From inmate tracking and cell checks to cloud-based business and artificial intelligence, Guardian RFID digitally transforms jails, prisons, and juvenile detention facilities of every size. Visit Guardian RFID for more information. And my other sponsor is American Military University. Guys, if you're looking to seek higher education and trust and believe, we need people in this profession to get out there and teach those young minds. A great school to go to is American Military University. They've been supporting corrections, what I do since I started, literally back in 2015, I think. So they've been with us for the long haul, which I think is pretty amazing. So today's topic, we're going to try to keep it, within the theme. But sometimes we do travel out. That's me being OCD a little bit, or ADHD, whatever that would be. But we're going to try to talk about your first day working in a prison or a jail. And this is a live Q&A. So feel free to ask questions. We'll get them right in the comments, and we'll try to answer all the questions we can. But real quick, I'm first going to start with Connie, and then we'll go to Russ. Connie, let's talk about when you started in corrections. Where did you start, and what was it like for you on your first day?
So I started on Rikers Island. My first day, I walk into OBCC, which of course I have no idea how to get anywhere. So I think that's one of the things, depending on where you work, you want to be able to kind of, get some lay of the land some way, somehow. But I drove up to Rikers Island. I had to get a pass to get across the bridge. And then once I got across the bridge, I had to go through another security checkpoint. And once I got through that security checkpoint, I had to get on a bus to get to my actual facility. So that in of itself, especially when you already don't know where you're going, you don't know what you're doing, that was a lot to start the morning out, to say the least. And then once I got to the facility, like, so I knew ahead of time that I should bring lunch because the process to get on and off the island was so extensive. So I had my lunch with me, but of course, like I did what, you know, us civilians do when you don't know no better, which is I had like a sandwich in an aluminum foil. And so I had my nifty lunch bag, which wasn't clear. I was winning, trust me, all day long I was winning. So nifty lunch bag that wasn't clear, my sandwich is in a foil, and I had like some grapes in a small like glass type Pyrex container. And suffice it to say, as I'm going through the first security checkpoint, just to get into the building, like the officer is having a field day with me, because it's also like prime time. Everyone's rushing into the time clock. So I'm literally holding up the process in the morning. And he's going through my lunch. He's like, what is all this in your lunch bag? Which I was like kind of like taken back because I didn't know any better. Certainly, if you don't know, you shouldn't bring foil into a facility. You should know that. I can tell you firsthand, you shouldn't do that. And certainly you shouldn't bring any sort of glass container into a facility, which I didn't know. So like I had like some strikes already coming in, but I was cool about it because I really didn't know. So I asked him if he wanted me to throw away my lunch. He said, no, you don't have to throw away your lunch. And he didn't, which I appreciated, was he didn't take anything away from me. He just said, you need to make sure you bring all of this stuff out of the facility when you leave and don't bring it back tomorrow, which I really, really, really appreciated. And then as I moved through like the gates where everyone's kind of like almost like it was like a herd of us. That's what it felt like, because it's like 8 o'clock in the morning. So everyone's like trying to get into their workout, you know, to their workstations. We're all kind of squeezed into the Sally Port, trying to wait for the next gate to slide open. And once that gate slides open, everyone kind of dispersed into their own directions. And I had no idea where I was going. So I'm like kind of looking around like the lost lamb. And this officer was kind enough to tell me that like I might not want to walk around looking like I don't know where I'm going, right? Like he pointed me into the right direction because I was like, I'm going to the clinic. But he said, you know, they're going to eat you alive if this is how you're going to walk around the facility. And so, you know, I think it was like all learning, literally all learning from day one. And, you know, I think those are the things that you don't really know much about until you get there. And I mean, the security mind was just not there. I'm like, what's wrong with my sandwich? Like, what's wrong with my container? I just got some grapes. Like he cares nothing about my grapes. He cares about the fact that it's in like this glass dish, which is clearly an issue. So that's how I started, but everything else was just learning. And I think what was helpful was that I didn't take offense to the lessons that were being taught, right? Like, even though like, you know, some people, oh, it's just, they're just harassing you first thing in the morning. It's like, no, like clearly you don't know what you should and shouldn't be doing. And like, you're learning. It's day one. I don't know. So like, I appreciate those who had patience with me because I was doing a lot of things wrong from day one until I figured out what was the right thing to do.
And I know on that first day, you have to earn that level of trust. And it's hard because you're entering a world where we can be very cynical, you know, and Russ started in 1989. Russ started in 1989 out of California. Hey, Russ, what was it like for your first day? I can't wait to hear this.
Okay, so for me, I kind of think about a few different first days that I had, because the first day that I was at my institution, I wasn't even hired yet. They gave me a courtesy tour, and it was of San Quentin. And so I had that day, but then I also had a first day in the academy, and then I had the first day of orientation at San Quentin, and then I had the actual first shift that I worked. So it was kind of a series of firsts. And you know, that first kind of, you know, courtesy tour, that was a little bit intimidating. I really kind of had to, check myself and say, is this really what I want to do? Because you got there and there were just, some monster inmates and stuff. And it was like, whoa, this is kind of crazy. Then after that, of course, the first day at the academy really wasn't anything except, getting a bunch of equipment and clothing and things like that. But by the time I got to the end of the academy, I was pretty well prepped for what, my first day was kind of going to be like. And my first day that we got there, it was just supposed to be just about orientation. And it was supposed to be, just about, getting there and taking a tour. And so it sounded luxurious, like, oh, we're going to have a nice, easy time. And we're just going to break ourselves in real slow. Well, we got there and this huge sergeant, I'll never forget him, BB McGriff. They called him the crime dog, right? And, he comes in there, he goes, everyone is going to East Block emergency searches now. I'm like, I wonder what an emergency search really is, because, they never really quite used that terminology. But what had happened is this inmate had asked an officer in East Block to pass a cup of coffee to the next guy over. And the officer grabbed a hold of it and poured it out. And there was a little black piece of plastic in there. So they had to extricate these guys. And they went in there with a piece of plastic. And it turned out that it opened the security lights. They had security screws, the kind that are like the little Allen wrenches with a little pip in the center. And it fit those perfectly. They had made it. And they were able to pull those out. And I think it had 7 shanks in one light and 5 in the other. And so we were up there the rest of the day, handcuffing all of these guys. They were all on death row and pulling them out and searching for hours upon hours upon hours on end. And so that was my introduction of my first, real duties as a correctional peace officer at that point. And it was a very dangerous situation, obviously, because they didn't know whether more guys affiliated with the Aryan Brotherhood at that time were, maybe going to try and take out some officers or make an escape attempt or what have you. And so that was my very first day, and it was a long one. Can't hear you.
So for me, it was a little unique. We actually took a tour of the prison before we actually went to the academy, which I actually think is a great idea. I think it gives people a sense of what they're getting into. We toured in civilian clothes. I think the inmates kind of knew who we were, like we were new boots. So it was around Christmas time. I started the academy around December of 2002. And my wife's grandmother had bought me a sweater with a giant snowflake on it. And I don't know what the hell I was thinking, but I decided I'm going to wear that on my first day. And I worked in a female facility. So, I walked down the tier with the 8 of us. There was 8 of us at the time that were selected to go to this specific facility before we started the academy. And I just remember people like, I didn't know it was Christmas yet. Who brought the fruitcake? Yeah. And I'm like, well, who's the fruitcake? Like, wow, this is going to be tough. And then, going to the academy and then coming back, and then they remembered exactly who I was. And one of the inmates that came up to me and she said, hey, weren't you the one with the snowflake shirt? And I'm like, man, that was like 4 or 5 months ago. But they remember and they wait, I thought. But for me, the toughest part on my first day was walking through that yard. And everybody's looking at you, just sizing you up and trying to figure out how to maneuver. And that still kind of gets me, even at the highest position I'm in now in my career, walking through the yards and everybody's looking at you to kind of, see how they're going to approach you. So it kind of, you have to be weary, of that. You have to make sure that you're ready for whatever can come your way. But walking through an active yard to get into a unit, and all of a sudden everything stops and they're all looking at you, and and you're trying not to look back. It's not a staring contest. You're trying to keep things moving, but in the end, you're just waiting for that first approach. But the first day obviously was intimidating for me. I was a little bit lucky because I had a chance to get a look at the facility beforehand. One of the questions that came our way, I want to see if we can get to some of the questions, trying to stay within the theme, guys, which is working your first day, what to expect. Michael C, it's not so much a question. He had a CO that was so goofed up on Xanax that he told an inmate he was going to pee all over his shit. Yeah, that's an interesting first day. We had a gentleman that messaged us from Texas. I think Travis Wilson. He wants advice for someone that's starting the academy. So what I'll do is I'll go with, we all have a perspective here. So what I'll do is I'll go with Russ first, because that kind of counts as your first day. I would think so. And then we'll kind of see what Connie has to say and myself. So Russ, any advice for someone starting the academy?
Okay, so starting the academy, you have to understand what that whole thing is about versus what it's going to be about when you get to your actual destination, your prison or your jail. Starting the academy, you're going to use every minute of that time to try and build a solid foundation. You want the kind of foundation where you're going to be able to know the policy, know the procedure. You're going to be able, hopefully they're going to give you some defensive tactics. They're going to give you some, handcuffing techniques. They're going to teach you some about gangs. They're going to teach you some about how to operate doors and things like that safely, and to be able, hopefully, to talk to inmates in a manner where you command their respect and their compliance. And, however long your academy is, it's too short. All right. But you want to take all of that stuff under advisement and try and, inculcate it in to be able to have some kind of, functioning level of competency, when you finally do get to your prison. But it's going to take you a while to get there. But having said all that, once you've taken all that stuff and tried to do with it what you will, when you actually get there to your prison, then you want to take all of that stuff and looking at it through the lens of the people that you're going to meet at your prison, your subject matter experts, the guy or gal that knows gangs or handcuffing, use of force, report writing, firearms, all of these different things. Find those subject matter experts, pick their brains, and then become a subject matter expert in everything that you can. And you're going to do fine with this.
Yeah. Hey, Connie, just out of you now, mind you, Connie, what's great about Connie is Connie provides a whole different perspective because she's actually held a lot of high positions, especially at the jail that she worked at in New York and also at a state facility out in Connecticut. And she kind of has it's an outside perspective, but it's also an inside perspective. So it's very unique. So from a civilian, this is a civilian perspective. What type of officer would you like to see coming out of that academy?
So one who knows the rules, right? So I think a lot of times once we step into the facilities, we pick up a lot of the best practices that are in the facilities that may not necessarily be like what the true rules are. And I find that those folks who are truly in tune with policy and procedure can help from a civilian perspective. They kind of help guide us through the process in the best way possible, right? Like it helps protect us and all of that. I think one of the things that I really appreciated about my academy experience was that it was I walked in not knowing much. And I think because I didn't know a lot, I was able to soak up what was being taught. But I think it's harder when you kind of have some idea about what you're doing. And then you trying to fit in what the academy is teaching you into what you're already doing, which makes it a little difficult. So the experience of one starting in a facility without going through the academy probably was like the gift and the curse, because there were things I probably should have known before going into a facility. But the gift in it was that I didn't necessarily have to struggle with what I was being taught and how that translated in the facility. What helped me was actually going into the facility already And then when they were teaching me stuff, it was like, oh, that's how that applies, or that's where that fits in, you know? So I think there's, you know, there's pros and cons, whichever the way it happens. But I think from a custody perspective, you guys carry like a heavy load, a heavy burden as far as like needing to understand the operational, the security, the everything that goes along with the facility and the inmates and everything else. So just being able to have an officer that absorbs all of that and can easily integrate that into everyday practice is really like, you know, a godsend for a civilian.
Yeah, and real quick, guys, if there are comments that are disrespectful, I will first give you a timeout for 5 minutes, which I just did to someone. And then if it continues to be disrespectful, I will block you out. The key for me is never about numbers. It's about having a professional community. So I rather have 5 quality, good people in my community than 100,000 people just being disrespectful. So I already put somebody in timeout. If you get feelings about it, it is what it is. But let's just be more professional. Next time around, you're blocked. And literally, you're going to wind up being blocked from the channel. I'm trying to keep things professional. So regardless of what perspective you have, let's be professional with it. Everybody's here. They're welcome to join in on the dialogue, but we have to create a level of respect for each other. I don't care what side of the wall you're on, but if you're disrespectful, this is not a place for you. Okay? Okay, so for my particular thing, the one advice I would give is that in corrections, when you start that academy, they're going to give you a foundation. So you got to learn everything that they're going to send your way, and do not do what some people may request, like when you get into the facility, hey, forget everything you learned in the academy. Don't do that. The thing is that what you learn is a foundation, so you can later apply what you're going to learn at that facility. So you're learning the technical stuff, and then later on, you'll learn how to apply that technical stuff. So right in the academy, please, guys, make an effort to understand that foundation. Don't dismiss. And hopefully, if you're an academy instructor, you don't do that. Like, don't do that. And if you're the training instructor inside the facility, don't do that. Don't dismiss each other. Don't say, hey, don't badmouth the people working in the facility saying, well, they've been there so long, they don't know about the changes. You know, we're going to teach you some new stuff, because then you're going to get these rookies coming in that feel that they're better than the people with experience. And we don't want that. It's the experienced people that are going to teach them how to maneuver. So we don't want that disconnect right from the get-go. And the other thing is when you're in the facility, if you're an experienced professional, don't dismiss what's happening in the academy, because that's the foundation. That's how stuff is going to be applied. So you don't want somebody with no knowledge. You want them to have some knowledge so you can facilitate that dialogue. So again, it's very important that we work together. And I would like to say this. Hopefully the academy and the facilities do kind of know what everybody's training on. So we have a level of what to expect. So if you're giving some new level of training to the rookies coming in, hopefully you're also giving that to the people who have stayed loyal and are in the system, because we want people to be on the same page. To me, that is one of the most important things when it comes to starting your career, because you don't want to start isolated from each other. You want to start working together. So the more that we understand each other, the easier that is for that to be accomplished. We have another great question I want to post. It comes from Derek. I thought this was a good question, and I'll go to Russ first, then Connie. On my first day with inmates, how should I introduce myself and let inmates know I'm about professionalism and here for both them and the facility? And I want to comment something that Derek said. This is a very balanced question. If you notice something, to me, just by the statement, the way you asked your question highlights the fact that you are a professional. I just like how you worded the question. I just want to give that a shout out. Hey, Russ, would you like to go first, and then we'll have Connie go?
Yeah, absolutely. So for the most part, if let's say, for instance, you're running a food crew or something like that, and it's a limited number of inmates, the introduction can be just as simple as, hey, glad you guys are working for me today. I'm officer such and such, and leave it at that, right? On a larger scale, if you're just working in a housing unit and you don't have specific inmates assigned to you, I would forego any type of formal or informal introduction. All right. Let the badge that sits on your chest do the talking for you. Because if you don't take it from that perspective, they're going to take it as a sign of weakness that you know, have to try and get in on a certain good side of them, so to speak. These inmates, they're used to having all kinds of churn and different officers in there. For them, it's not a day after day thing. They may or may not be able to tell that you're brand new. Maybe, you know, because you've got, you know, shiny new gear, they might know that. So they don't have any idea. So I would forego that part of it, right? And just, you know, just dive right in and let your actions speak for yourself. You don't have to tell them that you're going to be professional. You don't have to tell them that you're going to be by the book or not by the book, or whichever particular, you know, hopeful, you know, skill or talent that you have. Let them find out about it through your interaction, because otherwise they're gonna see you as weak for having to even explain yourself. You're silent.
Oh, I love that, guys. The key is right here is right off the bat, you are going to have inmates that are going to test you right from the get-go because they know you're new. And before we go to Connie's thing, the one thing I would say is don't lie to them. I know some people feel the need to answer an inmate when an inmate asks you, hey, you know, do you work at another facility? Do you work at this? Where some people feel it's about our pride. And they'll say, well, yeah, I worked at a jail, or I worked at another prison. I'm just being transferred in. But they know for a fact that you're new because of how you carry yourself. You know, there's a lot of stuff and experience that you're not going to know the first day. And one of it's the body language you have with those inmates. I'm not saying it's complacency. It's just there's a level of control there that you don't have your first day. And when you start telling inmates that, you know, because it's more about your pride that, you know, yeah, I've worked in a jail. I worked in jails for you. I'm just coming over here because it's more pay. Whatever your excuse is to justify your make-believe transfer, the point is they know it. They know it by your body language. They know how you speak to them. They know that you're a rookie. And the reason why they're asking you is because you're being tested. So don't fail that first test. And again, it's not something you have to answer to them anyway. You know, keep it moving. It's none of your business, you know. But having said that, some people feel the need to answer, which I disagree. But if you do, guys, you're lying. It's just setting up a very bad beginning when it comes to starting in this profession. Hey, but Connie, what's your thoughts on that great question by Derek?
I think for me, it's more important that your actions speak for you, right? Like you want that you are displaying professional behavior, you're engaging in the environment professionally, and you don't have to say anything, right? Because they'll see who you are by the actions that you take. You know, trying to pretend like you're not new is definitely not a good idea because your body will tell on you. Because you're going to experience things you never experienced before. You know, I remember the first time I think I was talking with an inmate, I could hear the nerves in my voice. Like I could hear it. And so in my mind, I'm like, he must know that I'm nervous, right? But, you know, I think it's engaging in the environment with confidence, you know, because not for nothing, like you are the person with authority in the interaction. And you are that professional in that interaction. And I don't think there ever needs to be any justification for who you are. I think the professionalism in of itself is enough.
You're silent.
So, yeah, my advice too would be is right off the bat, when you're dealing with the inmates, you actually want to show some level of competency and that you're effective. But I also like for the inmates to know that you're connected, that you know your resources, and at no time can you be isolated. If you're new, you want to let the inmates know that your support comes from your peers and not from them. A lot of them are going to know that you're stuck in an ambiguous situation. Sometimes you're new, and they're going to want to be that resource for you. And however their intent may be, maybe it is a good intent. You just don't know. So the key is you don't want to lean on them as that resource. Your resource are going to come from your peers, your supervisors, and let them see that, because at that point there is that you're never truly alone. So you're not walking the beat alone. You're walking the beat with the, you know, with the strength of the others that are going to help you get adjusted. That's why I don't believe in that sink or swim method. Me and Russ discussed that a long time ago. You know, the sink or swim, you know, let the rookie go out there and let the rookie discover their way. What a horrible way to start this profession. Let me start the profession where I don't feel people have my back, and let the inmates see that they don't have my back. That is a stupid technique that I hopefully is obsolete and done with. What you should do is, I understand trust takes time, so I'm not saying that's from you to them, but that rookie should be able to trust you 100%. Okay, let them they could earn the trust with you. I get that, but they should have to be able to trust you right from the get-go. So when I get in, I need to know who my resources are. I need the inmates to know that I'm going to go to them when I need something. So I think the key here on that first day is, during that interaction, is to make sure the inmates know that you're never alone. That if you have, if you have concerns, exactly where to go. That to me is one of the most important things. Got another question here. It must be difficult to be a correctional officer, because sometimes you just don't know if there are some that are going to use their authoritative abilities in ways that violate what they're taught. So let's answer this. Guys, by the way, we're open to any questions. Nothing's too controversial for us. So I'm going to go with Connie first on this, and then we'll go. Yeah, I want you to know something. She knows I do this on purpose. So actually, let me get the screen right on Connie. And Connie, can you answer that for me, please, if you don't mind?
Sure. So, I think in any profession, I don't think it's just in corrections, right? Like, when people have power, people tend to use power in ways that aren't always positive, right? So I think that we can acknowledge that there will be uses of power, misuses of power. You just don't have to jump on the bandwagon, right? I think that ultimately, most of us are professionals, and there isn't a tremendous abuse or misuse of power. And we are our brothers and our sisters' keepers. We do have an obligation to speak up if, in fact, we see power being misused or abused, because ultimately any violation in the facility can result in an issue for all of us, right? Any violation can result in whatever that liability is that stands on the other side of the violation. And so I think it's important that, one, we know what the rules are so we can identify when someone is using or abusing their authority. And two, I think there's enough respect amongst us that we can speak to our colleagues to say, hey, listen, what's going on? Like, what's up, right? I know some people don't feel comfortable with that. Some people just don't like having confrontation. Some people just don't want to have to deal with it. No one, I know, when I was in the union, the one thing they said is, you never want to be the reason why, one of your fellow union members was going to lose a job, right? And that kind of always stuck with me. And it kind of puts you in that weird thought process, like, so what do I do if, in fact, something happens or something? So I think first you speak to the person if you identify there's an use or abuse of authority. And I think that if the person doesn't self-correct, then you have an obligation to go to the next in the chain of command so that that person can address the issue. You just don't want it to be that you saw something, you didn't say something, and you become a part of the problem, right? Like, oh, I did it with him all the time. He never had an issue. He never said anything to me, right? So you just want to do your best to mitigate any of the liability, including you possibly having any fallout because of it.
Can I share something before we get to Russ too? I like what you said. Actually, one thing right off the bat, guys, is this goes beyond a feeling, right? So if you see something surface, you have to report it. So that part's not even a discussion. That's in your role. Both as a sworn law enforcement professional, you have to report if you see anything that violates any type of law, policy, procedure, whatever it may be. In some cases, there could be a feeling. And sometimes when it's a feeling and it's ambiguous, we get very concerned because what if we're wrong? What if we're not right? Well, we always have to be concerned. What if we are right and we don't address it? So there's ways that you could professionally approach that individual and say, hey, listen, I don't like how close you are with that other inmate. I thought maybe we could discuss it. But again, it's in a private and controlled setting. You know, maybe you want to take the person out afterwards, or if you're not the person to say it to them, find someone that they do know, that they do trust. I mean, sometimes it's really about the person delivering the message. You know, maybe you're not the one to deliver it. Maybe they're closer to somebody else and maybe they would be better to deliver the message. But the problem that happens to us a lot of the times is that we kind of sense something and we don't listen to our gut and we don't do nothing about it. And then when the officer or the staff member gets caught up, we knew that was going to happen. But yeah, but if you knew, did you make any effort to stop it? You know, that to me has been the biggest hiccup with corrections, prisons, and jails. Hey, Russ, what's your thoughts on that question?
Well, you know what? There's a lot to unpack inside of a question like that, and because you know there's a lot of competing factors that go into those type of scenarios. Some of the things that can tend to happen inside a correctional setting is when you're brand new, you don't necessarily know what the exact right thing is to do. And you can get caught up, in a little band of peers that are doing stuff that's outside the bounds. There's also something to be said for in this type of work. There's no real middle ground. So do you necessarily look like you might be a hard ass and are being unprofessional because of your interactions with inmates? Well, some people might see it that way, and there might be others of us, especially that have towed some of the harder lines there, that go, no, that's being very professional. That person is actually, they're not being abusive. I mean, they're drawing clear lines. And so sometimes when some of these things are brought to other people's attentions, they don't see it the same way that I would see it or that person would see it. So there is that. Lastly, on this particular issue, let me say this. This is one of the reasons that I founded Keepers of Chaos, all right? And it was to be able to bring corrections professionals together, whether you've got, 100 years of experience or you're brand new, and to be able to, pass this level of experience down, and even some of the things that happen to the new guys up, so that we can all benefit and that we can all be better at being professionals, and to be able to cut some of that stuff out.
I want to get to Brandon's question, but before I get to Brandon's question, the Facebook user here, by the way, Brandon, where's that one remark? Congratulations. Looks like he said, by the way, your videos helped me out tremendously in preparing for the interview. That's great news. Hopefully, you get the job, because we need people who seek the information, because those are the ones that are going to enter this profession with just that level of professionalism. I like the people that are doing their due diligence before they enter the profession and taking advantage of the resources that were not there for us when we came in. So just the fact that you're looking for things and trying to get an understanding says a lot about who you're going to be when you work behind that wall. So keep going, be that excellent person, find your purpose, and maybe one day when I'm long retired, you'll come back and say, hey, Gangi, I'm running my own prison today. And it started because of that video that you guys did a while back. I mean, I think that's a great way to pay it forward for us. Real quick, comes from Facebook user. Don't come in on day one acting like you know everything and expecting to be promoted by week 2. You'll learn something every day of your career. Be patient, be firm, yet fair, and make a career, not a job. I love this. So I'll go first with this, Russ, if you don't mind. Then I'll give it to Russ and Connie. I read a lot of books, and I love Robert Greene, and I know Connie could probably comment on this too as well. He has a book about, becoming a master. And basically he says right at the very beginning, when you're learning a trade, be an apprentice. Don't look to, surpass the people. Don't, be the apprentice. Take the time to learn, learn from those experienced individuals and show them that you want to learn. Guys, the magic here is if you have someone with experience and they connect with someone that wants to learn, it's a beautiful thing. It really is a beautiful thing, but we have to show respect for people with experience when they're laying out that knowledge, because eventually they're not going to be here. They're going to be gone. And there's so much value that they're going to take with them. So if you get a chance to talk to a veteran of the profession, you should do it. But I agree with a Facebook user here. I don't have a name here. It would be great to give you a name because what you're saying is so spot on. That you do learn something every day. I got, 19 years in, I'm an admin. I learn something new every day. It comes with the problems that you have to face every day. And a lot of these problems are unique. and how you adapt and adjust. It's the process that teaches you. So don't always look to rush through things. It's the process. It's asking the why. You know, it's not about the what or the how. It's the why it needs to be done. That's the key. That's how you learn things in this profession. Don't be afraid to ask why. The technical stuff, you'll learn that. But what keeps you mindful of the things every day of your career is when someone tells you the why behind it. I remember my first day, or one of my first days, an officer was giving me door checks, and he was showing me how to do them, and he did a couple of things in which he put his foot against the cell door, because these were doors that open out, and also checked the lock. And I'm, memorizing it, seeing his routine. And he was quick to tell me, hey, the reason why I do this is because an inmate one day, the door wasn't locked and got me right in the face with the door. I never forgot that. That stayed with me 19 years later. So the why really helped me kind of, remember the lessons that I'm being taught every day. But the key is be an apprentice, learn. Don't look to shine, learn. What's your thoughts on this, Russ?
Well, yeah, that's a spot on thing. And this is one of the problems I see in corrections all the time is, he's talking here about, hey, 1 week I know everything. And then week 2, I want to promote. And week 3, I want, weekends and holidays off. And the idea behind that is just to get yourself into a position that you're just on cruise control for career, right? Wrong. If you're not out there constantly seeking the harder, some of the harder things to do in corrections, and there's a lot out there that's hard. If you're not constantly out there raising your hand, say, hey, you know what? I'll do it. Let me give that a try. If you're not, volunteering yourself, you're cutting yourself short. If you're cutting yourself short, you're never going to learn everything that you need to know. And there is a lot to know. I took throughout my whole career a lot of pride in, being able to find things, about being able to read people, about being able to, gain intelligence and to be able to capitalize on that. And so I took that with me through my whole career. And I swear to God, on my very last day, I went out there and it took me several hours, but I found a shank on my very last day. And you have to be able to do that through the entire arc of your career. But if you're just going to be someone that's just going to try and find a way to settle in, you're of no use to anyone.
It's powerful, Russ, because that's true. Hey, Connie, what's your thoughts?
Sorry. Which thoughts? I was going through the comments.
Okay.
Which one are we weighing in on right now?
Okay, let me get you the question. It's from Facebook user.
Thank you.
I think it's a great question. And he talks about, let me give you the exact question. Don't come in on day 1 acting like you know everything, expecting to be promoted by week 2. You'll learn something every day of your career. Be patient, be firm, yet fair. Make it a career, not a job.
Absolutely. So I think coming in and being able to acknowledge that you don't know everything, I think says a lot, right? Like, I think when we allow ourselves to be the apprentice and we allow ourselves to be a student of the industry, we grow more from that approach. Because, I think about in medical, I've seen nurses do the same thing. Like, someone's gonna go draw blood. I've seen nurses do it ABC. I've seen it CDF. Like, I've seen it done so many different ways. And each time I look at how someone does it, I can understand, oh, I see why you did it that way. And I feel like that's the same thing with facility operations, right? Yes, there is an order of things and there's an expectation that we follow the order of things. But we still always learn when you had someone who came from a different facility and they may have done it differently for some, and I don't want to say an arbitrary reason, but it was appropriate for their facility. And when they came over here, they started doing it another way. And sometimes just by observing what other people are doing and the way they're doing things, it allows us to be more efficient, more effective, but I don't feel like there's ever been a time that I've been in the facility and I haven't learned something. I feel like that process is ongoing. And someone in the comments said, if you've stopped learning, it's time for you to retire. And I really do agree with that. I feel like when you stop being a student of the industry, you stop being a student of the trade, I think it is time, right? Because we learn something new all the time. And I'm a firm believer that when you're not critically thinking anymore, that's when you stop learning.
Yeah, and guys, as I said, be that apprentice. I know Connie's very familiar with Robert Greene's books. So I learned that right off the get-go, guys. And again, just have value for those that spend their time to teach you what they've learned. I mean, guys, that's 25 years of experience, you know, trial and error. And the last thing you want to do is dismiss it because you're coming out of the academy thinking that you know it all. Guys, the fact that they can learn or teach you what they've learned in the course of 25 years is priceless. And again, the key question is not about what or how. You know, to ask them why. Let them tell you their stories. Let those stories live on. I mean, that's kind of the tear talk part of it all, you know. Let's share those stories because stories are what stays with you, especially if they have that emotional impact. Great question from Derek. How do I keep up with my physical fitness while working long hours to stay as fit with the inmates? I'm going to start off real quick and just say my answer real quick. Yes, I agree with that 100%. And I'll have Russ explain that part because he's more into the gym than I am. But I will say this. Don't forget about this. This is the most important part. What stops me, yes, you have to be healthy. Don't get me wrong. So I'm not minimizing that, but hear me out. I just want to make sure we don't overlook the mind game. The key to survival in this profession to me has always been about communication. Are you good with communication? Because that's the first tool you will always go to. But having said that, obviously there's other tools. So let me get to 6'9" Russ Hamilton.
Okay, so let me tell you right off the bat, you know, you're pulling doubles and things like that. It's not going to be easy. It might even be impossible because, you know, we have a lot of competing interests, you know, especially you start out young in this game and you got some kids and you got a wife and, you know, you've got some social things that you do, whether it's, you know, church or the football league or whatever. So there's that. And, you know, all those competing time elements are very detrimental to our health. Also, the fact is that when we start losing those elements of time, we start eating like crap. Now, I've had times during my career where I was in pretty good shape because I've managed to, you know, find some time for the gym and for the overtime and everything else. And I had times in my career where I was, you know, crap. I was eating terrible and I wasn't able to work out because I was working, you know, 4 or 5 overtimes per week. So having said all that, I think that what you have to do is keep yourself in motion, right? You might be doing some of the overtime and whatever, but find a way to at least do some things while you're at work, man. Maybe you're standing on the stairs for a while and you can do some calf raises. Make sure that you eat clean. Make sure that, you know, you're not just sitting back in that chair all the time. Get out there and do some operational stuff with regards to, you know, if you're going to do a raid on a dorm or on a cell block or things like that, and just try and keep those things moving. Try and eat healthy and get some modicum of exercise within your shift if you can. Having said that, if you have the chance to forego overtime, right, if it's not mandatory at whatever point, don't do overtime, all right? Take that extra bit of time to go to the gym and to work out and stuff, you know? And then if you feel like it, come and join me in August and I'm going to go do a Tough Mudder again. So anyway, I'm still trying to get that in the works and stuff. It seems like people aren't interested in doing something as challenging as that right now, but I'm going to do it in August. It'll be the third one I've done. The third one I've done since I turned 50.
And I'm going to tell you something, guys. If you have a chance, Russ even said you can carry his water bottle. You know, which I, you know, that's what I may do. Hey, Connie, you know, you worked in the medical side. Obviously, the hours could be crazy. I mean, what would be your advice to keep yourself healthy and shape, especially when you have to commit to those extra hours?
Yeah, I mean, I just have to echo Russ. It is really hard. You know, I see Steve had a comment like, you just got to do it, right? The inmates are doing it. You got to do it. So, I mean, I've seen, you know, people try to go before work, which in of itself is already hard, especially if you have family, you have children. It's also, you know, on your time off, you want to sleep, right? Like, especially if you're constantly working doubles. And that's just a reality of the environment. But, you know, there's just, I think in this space of wellness, there's been a lot of conversations about things that you can do to stay active while you're on the job. Not so much just because I mean, I've been working remote for the last almost year and a half. And, you know, they started like sort of kind of pushing information about like different exercises you can do while you're sitting, different, you know, exercises you could do while you're walking. You know, I remember in some facilities, I know they have a sort of a fitness center type thing. I mean, the gym is really small. I don't know if it was part of the locker room. It was on the men's side of the house. So I never went over there to see what the setup was. But like if it is during, you know, your meal time and you want to just go do a quick little workout, maybe it's 30 minutes of cardio or something. I don't know what is available. I feel like those are the opportunities that you take, because I know it's very difficult to do it outside of work. But if you do have a schedule where you can fit it in, you know, I certainly would support, you know, anyone who's going to go run into the gym for a couple of minutes. And I mean, even better if you have some sort of setup at home. But I think what we got to realize too is that, you know, the physical, the mental, the spiritual, all of that matters. And we do have to disconnect. We have to make it a priority to throw a little self-care in there, even if it's just, you know, 30 minutes a day.
Yeah, and I do want to mention that you have to enjoy it too. It's not something you should dread. I mean, the people that commit themselves to that schedule, I know some people that get up at 4 a.m. to do it before they start their 6 o'clock shift, and they love it. You know, so the motivation definitely is the love that you have for yourself, you know, and basically the things you need to do to keep yourself healthy. I think when it comes to that, you'll find a way to make it happen. You know, I mean, trust and believe. I mean, there's always a way to do it. You know, maybe don't watch that Netflix series that you have planned. I mean, don't get me wrong, we all have some downtime. You know, we want that, but obviously maintaining health is our priority. But again, I don't want you to forget to maintain your mental health. You know, we're not out to intimidate inmates. They're not going to be intimidated by us, no matter how big you are. Trust me. I think most of the time, the big you are, the more they try to get at you. You know, they get props for taking down someone who is a lot bigger than me. I'm only 5'5". I know this one gentleman mentioned it's tough for him to get in shape because he's 5'9", 180. Listen, most of the time, unless you're an asshole, they're not going to get props for taking you out. They're going to go after the people that are a little bit bigger. So, you know, if you're a bigger person, you're an asshole on top of that, you know, watch out, you know. But having said that, it's not about, you know, your size at all. It's about how you carry yourself in this profession. And one thing I want to say, guys, is that, and this to me is important, especially if you're working in the prison where the inmates have already been introduced to the system, they're not going to fear you. They're not going to fear the uniform. They're not going to fear any of that. They've been conditioned. They know how, it's about you, how you carry yourself. So the key at this point on your first day is definitely to start that foundation, you know, because this is about growth and evolution. So the very first day is probably the most important day for you, because this is where you make your mark on the profession. And this is where you also tell yourself if you could do it or not. You know, there's a lot of people that make a mistake in the beginning of their profession that 20 years later, they still can't live it down, because it was right at that initial moment when they entered this profession. You know, so the key obviously is that I know we're all going to make mistakes. I get that. And for the people that are working with those rookies, you know, make sure that you do stuff to motivate them to go past that mistake, because people may not realize that a mistake at the very beginning sets that initial impression. And here's a couple of things. It sets the initial impression, yes, on how you see yourself and you being effective in this profession, but it also sets the impression of how you see others. You know, are they going to support me if I make another mistake? You know, because it's going to happen. And then it could also mess with your growth. So, you know, having that support, because mistakes are going to happen, and helping, you know, that person get to that next level, no matter where they're at, no matter what mistake is made, is very key, because at the beginning, it sets the foundation. The last thing we want at that foundation is a mistake that they made that they just can't get past. What's your thoughts on that, Russ? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, well, I wanted to go back as I see Brandon's statement up there. Getting fit's hard. It's intimidating just to get started. It is, unless you break it down, right? And you can't look at it like it's a destination, right? You can't get in shape by tomorrow, but you know what? But you can get in shape by 2, 3, 4, 5 months down the road if you just do a little bit every day. So start with that. You have to break it off into manageable, discrete amounts, right? You're after the quantum results, not the results of, oh, I'm gonna work out today and I'll be in shape tomorrow, because that's not going to happen. So, and then as far as Anthony was talking about, starting out with a mistake, try and just not do that, but try and get beyond mistakes if you do make them. We all make mistakes in this profession, right? It's just a matter of trying to put yourself into a position to recover, learn from it, and go on. If you don't learn from it, if you don't recover, if you don't go on, then there's nothing beyond that I can say to help you.
Connie, what's your thoughts?
I mean, I would just have to say that you have to just make it a priority. I mean, I think ultimately there's going to always be sort of that intimidation factor, walking in. I mean, as a female going into the facility, there was always, some thought about, I don't know that I ever doubted that I was safe, because I had a great relationship with custody, and, like, that just wasn't a fear or a thought in my mind. But, I can definitely see where, there is that pressure to, get bigger or to be stronger, where, in my mind, your mental strength, right? Like your wit, your ability to think quickly on your feet and to be adaptable is really what gets you through. And it's not to say that an inmate isn't going to test you, because it happens. I mean, I've seen it happen. But the reality is that, we're taught many things about de-escalation, and we're taught many things about ways to sort of mitigate, or just to sort of head off at the path. These situations that we could see down the line may escalate. And so, even though there is that pressure to, kind of want to be physically strong, and I think it is a requirement in our world, but it's also important that we are just tactful and we're strategic, and we don't necessarily have to always rely on the brawn. But I remember in the beginning, when I first met Russ, I was like, oh my goodness, I would have been scared of Russ. I don't know. But it's just a reality, right? Like, your stature is just that. And it could be used, to kind of sort of keep people in their space sometimes. And I think, the inmates could be intimidated by someone's stature. So it just depends, I think.
Yeah, I know, guys. I mean, talking from my experience, I'm 5'5", maybe 185. I mean, it's hard to be intimidated when you have to look up to everyone. And that was my time at the female facility. So, I mean, hasn't changed much now working with men. But again, I can communicate. So I think that's helped me out. Good question comes our way from Justin Marty. How do you handle inmates that come up to you and say, how do you feel if they want to handle stuff in-house and they don't want ICS being pulled? I guess that would be incident command. I don't know. It could, again, the acronyms, you got to be careful, guys, because acronyms at different facilities mean different things. Being called and getting confinement. I believe I understand the question. I could go first, but it looks like Russ is over. Yeah, okay. So go ahead, Russ. Help me out, man. Lead the way.
Okay, so first of all, an inmate saying something like that, it's one of two things, right? He's either testing you to try and put you in a situation where you can end up losing your job, you can end up losing pay, you can end up being civilly sued, criminally sued. Don't ever buy into that. The second thought that occurs to me with something like this is there are some other people at that particular institution that are playing this dumb little games with these guys, right? We're not on their level. We're way up above their level, right? And just, you know, the idea, and I've seen it before, I've been around it, where it's like, oh yeah, you guys, you go ahead and handle that, you know, go have your fight, you know, back behind the showers or whatever. That's not what we do. That's not up to us. That's not what we've been charged with doing, and that is not part of our oath. So what are we going to do? I don't care how convenient it is to have an inmate whip on another one, especially if the other one has been a problem child. We don't get to make that call. So we never bite into that. We are the professionals. We are the ones that set the tone for the unit. We are the ones that set the tone for the institution. We are the ones that set the tone for the entire department. So if there's other people out there that are playing those little, you know, inmate games, they need to step up their game and they need to become better professionals, or they need to get out, because that's just going to put someone in a position where they're either going to get physically hurt, spiritually hurt, emotionally hurt, or financially hurt.
Hey, I missed a little part of it because my daughter came in, so hopefully I'm not repeating something. But most likely, maybe I am, but hopefully it creates a different perspective. But it's a test of communication. You know, when an inmate tells you something and they expect you not to do something with it, they're testing to see. It's actually in my book, Inmate Manipulation Decoded, guys. If you get a chance, please get the book. I'll have the link in the description. But this is part of that. You know, they're testing to see where you go with that information. And guys, they're telling you stuff that's obvious that requires you to act. So, you know, the next day when they see nothing has happened, then they know, like, okay, you know, I got this person, because they're not communicating. You know, the key is our loyalty goes to our brothers and sisters. There are no secrets between you and an inmate. And I don't care if the inmate tells you, hey, I'm going to tell you something, but you can't tell no one. Nope. Let them know right off the bat, whatever you're going to tell me, I'm going to do what I have to do within my prescribed role. There's no secrets between us. And guys, that does happen a lot. That happens right from the very first day going in. It's a test to see, where do you go with that information? Am I going to go tell my peers, or, you know, am I going to leave it between us? Because that to me actually shows where your resources are. And trust and believe, guys, if you do nothing with that information, it's going to move their game forward on you, because they're going to think that you're not going to go to your resources. You're not going to go to your peers, or maybe you don't have no one to go to. But again, there's no confidence between you and an inmate. There's no secrets there. Connie, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, there's absolutely none. I've had situations where inmate wants to come and tell me something, you know, it's just for me. Like, there's no information that's just for me, you know, and the moment conversation seems to be getting like secretive or something, like I would usually actually walk them right over to the officer's desk. If I was in medical, or if I was in the open area, certainly that would be something that I would do, just because, you know, I never want to give the impression that I am open to having a confidential conversation, because I'm not. You know, that is not within my prescribed role to have confidential intel coming from an inmate. And quite frankly, if there's something going on the compound, something going on with another inmate, an officer is who would be appropriate to handle that type of situation. And so I've never had an issue sort of setting those boundaries to make sure that the inmates knew not to come with me with none of the shenanigans, because I just wasn't interested. I think that many times when they see, especially being a civilian, if they could see that there was a disconnect between me and custody, I felt like that was their opportunity to come in with some of their manipulations, right? But because I didn't allow there to be a disconnect between myself and the officers, particularly in medical, and even anyone in operations that I worked with, like I was always certain to use or tap into the resources, because I honestly felt that custody was better equipped to deal with whatever this was that the inmate was trying to bring forward. You know, if it was a medical issue, that's very different, you know, because of privacy and all that other stuff. But even then, I would bring in the medical doctor, or I would bring in whoever their treatment team was, that was who we were having a conversation with. There were no personal conversations with me, even surrounding medical information, because that's like, it's not appropriate.
Yeah, now, guys, I'm trying to keep track of the trolls. We do have a few trolls that made it in. Hey, guys, if you're going to say something negative, I'm going to ban you and then block you. So it doesn't make any sense to do it, because at that point, you know, you're going to get a stupid comment off. Okay, fine. You're banned and you're gone from the channel forever. You know, so, you know, if you want to be a troll, do it secretly. You know, but once you put yourself on Front Street and once I start getting the moderators in play, I'm going to get you out, and then you'll be a secret to my channel forever. I just don't want it. And guys, even if you're a former inmate on this channel, be professional. You're welcomed here. You know, we're looking to create a bridge, to create some type of change. And this community is about professionalism. And the funny thing is, it's not the CEOs on this channel that are being disrespectful right now. So I want people to know that and let it be known, because maybe I should start saving these comments of the disrespect. And maybe I can show these comments to the media, because I am connected with the media, and say, where do you see the disrespect coming from? Is it from the CEOs or is it from the former inmates? You know, so let's be professional and, you know, come on, guys, let's start building bridges instead of destroying it. You know, that's the key. Great question by Derek, by the way. And I think I get it. I'm going to try to read through this message here, Derek, because I think we typed a little too quick, but I think I get the message. Looking back, how would you guys went in on your first day? So basically, I believe the question is, you know, looking back at it now, would I have done anything different? So I'm going to go first real quick and drop my little tidbit of knowledge, if I may. I think to me, this matters, is I actually believe I never went into the system thinking I know everything. And I was able to connect myself with the right people at the right time. So here's a couple of things I would like to mention as I moved up in my career and I've evolved, and I no longer have that myopic perspective, because again, I went from custody to the administrative level. When you get a chance, try to learn everything. I mean, it's not so much about your departmental structure, but also don't forget how you have to interact with those other departments. That's very important, because as you move forward in your career, that knowledge you gain at the front line becomes a very strong foundation for how you make decisions. I mean, again, you have that phrase, don't forget where you come from. Well, you know, if you were active on the front line and you really learned a lot, then that phrase applies. Don't forget where you come from, because that's literally how you're going to make decisions as you move up. But if you weren't that active and you really didn't maneuver and really took that chance to learn on the front line, then everything above you, when you have to make those decisions when you get higher up, it's going to be a lot harder, because you're not going to have a foundation to lean on. And again, that's just your chance to keep on learning. You know, so again, that's one thing. The other advice I would give you is, when we first start this profession, guys, corrections could be very lonely. It is. It could feel like you're alone, you know, and when we start in, we want to look to belong. And sometimes when we look to belong, sorry, my one light went out. Sometimes when we look to belong, we actually are willing to accept anybody, you know, that we can connect with, not realizing that some of them may not be the most professional. So when you come in knowing that this is your career and you're setting that foundation of professionalism right from day one, connect with people that have that like mind that you share, that professionalism, that sense that this is a career and I want to do the best I can be. I want to be effective. Connect yourself with the right people at the very beginning and you will grow. But if you connect yourself with the wrong people because you're just looking to belong and you're letting that supersede logic because you're willing to connect with anybody just to get that feeling of acceptance, it's going to set you back. Take your time, find the right people, and every day look to grow from the knowledge that they share. And hopefully those people want to share that knowledge. Again, it goes both ways. If you're experienced and you have a rookie asking you for information, be that. Lead the way. Because again, it's experience and it's 25 years worth or however many years worth that, you know, is a gift to that rookie. And if they're asking for it, it's a gift for you to give it. What's your thoughts, Russ? I'll go with you first.
So, you know, it's hard for me to point to something I would have done different because not to say I'm perfect or anything, but I just think that the way that things unfolded for me were the way that they were meant to unfold. I think that the one thing I would really point out to everyone, though, the one thing that I had going for me, and I wish I had had these words to kind of, you know, submit cement this picture in my mind was the idea about that I mentioned earlier about raising your hand, about being the one to push forward, about being the one to tackle things. I started out my career kind of that way, even though that wasn't my natural maybe personality. I was more of one to kind of hang back and watch things. But by doing that, I put myself in a position to grow that much faster. And so that's the advice that I give is I wish I'd been even quicker on that, that I'd been even more pushy about, trying to, get an assignment from a sergeant. Sure, I'll do that for you, Sarge. I'll do that. Always have my hand raised. Always be the one they can call on. Always be the one that they think of first when they're going to try and give you something that's going to bolster your experience. So
I think that's great. And Connie, what's your thoughts on that?
So, I mean, I do think this is a kind of tougher question only because you can't unknow what you've learned over the last 25 years, right? So, I think for me, it would be, I think one, I underestimated what the environment would be like. Like I had no clue to begin with. And then I thought everything would oh, it's not going to be so bad, right? I mean, I think after working, you see that it's not so bad. But that's from a civilian perspective, right? And I can only have that confidence because I had great officers around me, right? And I think it's being able to acknowledge that the officers have a level of expertise that needs to be respected. And I don't know that all civilians come in thinking I have to be respectful of that expertise, right? So it's almost like if you come and try to tell me how to be a doctor, I shouldn't respect that because how are you going to tell me how to be a doctor? And I think the same goes for us civilians that go into the correctional space when you guys are the experts in the safety security side of the house, right? So it is, I think I would have told myself back then to do a little more research so I could understand what you guys were doing. But I think in the beginning, it was like, oh, you don't really need to understand that, right? Like you really just need to understand how to do your job. And I think that's not a good approach to take because the right hand should know what the left hand is doing in order for us to really be partners with each other.
Yeah, that's true. And guys, I just want to some good advice coming too. From Steve Bernard. Now, guys, he represents Guardian RFID. We talked about them before. They're the ones that sponsor the show. So obviously, if you guys get a chance, check out their website, guardianrfid.com. I announced it at the beginning of the episode. It does help your facility out a great deal. And if you go to their YouTube channel, you can see a lot of videos of what the company's about. Steve also said, if I could change one thing, I would ask more questions as a new officer. Don't let pride or ego get in the way. Don't feel like you're being that guy. Ask questions. I agree. And to add on to Steve, ask why. I keep on saying ask why, but it's true. I got something that's a good question from Andy. Andy has actually been recently pretty active in our community, which I love. And he's been posting a lot of comments in our videos. So I'm really learning a lot from the questions he asked. By the way, guys, that's how we learn. We never know how much we know until someone asks the question, and then we have to either figure it out on the spot, and it surprises us sometimes where the information goes. But he says this, and maybe I could start with this one too, is Andy, what are some of the things you guys do to keep yourself awake if you've been put on night shifts and you've never done nights? Okay, so give you a little, I don't really talk about myself a lot on this show, but I'll tell you how my schedule worked. And I did work nights a few years. So the beginning of my career, for the first year, I was strictly second shift. So by me, that's 2 to 10 p.m., a quick 8 hours. And thank God, I'm not working for an agency that's severely understaffed. Usually my 8 hours was 8 hours. But then I started doing recips to get another day off or two. So I wind up doing 2 16-hour shifts back to back and an 8-hour shift. And I would do those over the weekend. So I would start at 2 p.m. on a Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, leave Sunday morning at 6 a.m., drive an hour home because I lived about an hour away, get about 3 or 4 hours of sleep, and then go right back to work for 2 o'clock, do another, 16 hours, leave again on Monday morning, and then, drive an hour home. So an hour there, an hour back, and then go ahead and do a regular 8 hours, 2 to 10 in the hopes I don't get mandated after doing the schedule, the 40 hours in 3 days. And you know what's funny is the first day driving back on the double was a lot harder than the second day for some reason. I don't know. Then when I moved into the become a sergeant, and that was about 8 or 9 years in, I went to a maximum security prison, did my first year on second, so 2 to 10, but did my remaining years before I crossed into admin overnight, which was 10 to 6. And I loved it. I just felt there was we were closer. But what I did, guys, and I know it sounds crazy, I keep myself moving. I try to maintain a normal schedule. I wasn't the kind of person that, still slept 8 hours, which I don't think maybe I should have. I would probably get home around 7:15, try to get to bed by 8, and wake up at 11 or 11:30, because it's hard to sleep during the day. So you're never really going to get 8 hours. I mean, the world is moving, and you're, and you have to try to get some sleep. Again, I don't recommend you stay on that shift for long, but I know that some people may have to because of other obligations. But I will say this, guys, keep yourself moving. The moment you feel tired, get yourself up and running, get the blood flowing. No matter how long you're on third shift, your body is never meant to stay up at this time, especially 3 to 4. That's or 2 to 4. Those are very tough times to stay up. So for me, my advice is I always kept myself moving. The moment I felt that I was getting tired, I kept myself moving, and I did not live on caffeine. I may have had 1 cup of coffee going in, maybe, or maybe some type of energy bar. But after that, I trusted my body to give me what I needed. I didn't want to live off that. So again, my advice was to keep it moving, engage in dialogue with your staff. I mean, again, I was a supervisor, so I was able to walk around and kind of, but you guys, you have to do what you can to stay alert, because if you miss that one radio call, Hey, Russ, what's your thoughts?
So the thing is you kind of have to have a comprehensive idea of what you're doing. It's not merely about staying awake. It's about staying awake and getting sleep while you're at home. So this is what I'll tell you, and I found that the kind of works for me is that the first thing that you need to do is figure out when it is that you're going to sleep. And if you can't get to sleep, if you're not able to, flip that switch and get there, I found the easiest thing on my body to use is Benadryl. Okay, Benadryl will put me under, and it washes away with that first cup of coffee. The second thing is you have to be in a completely dark environment. So get those kind of blinds that darken everything, or God forbid, you're going to look crazy to the neighbors or whatever, but put tinfoil over that, and that complete darkness will help you get there and stay there. Third thing, of course, is about sound. All right. So you know what? You spend a few bucks to get that app on your phone. That's the white noise app, right? You can get Babbling Brook. You can get, Ocean Surf. You can get, it sounds like a fan, or it sounds like a slightly rocking train, or, loons in the background, or all of those things combined. So you get that, and that washes away that sound that irritates you and wakes you up. The neighbor's kid occasionally yelling, maybe some dogs yapping in the background. That won't bother you as much if you have that going. And then the next thing to tell you about is as soon as you wake up, and it's time to start getting ready to go to work or whatever, man, flip those lights on, take that light, full in your face for 5 or 6 minutes, and that will start to change that circadian rhythm, and you'll be able to get into gear. And once you're in gear to do that, keep on going. And then last but not least, don't try and switch back during your weekend, right? You may not have to keep or be able to keep the exact same hours, but you have to try and fit that sleep in at about the same time or pretty close, because otherwise you're going to keep having to readapt over and over again. And that's what the real killer is going to be.
Now, hey, Derek, real quick, you got a question for Connie, but you kind of, okay, I see it. Okay. Before we get to that question, Derek, I got to get Connie's medical opinion. Third shifters, I mean, how do they keep themselves healthy? How do they keep themselves awake and alert?
It's hard. Like there's no easy answer for that. So I know that a few of the nurses that I worked with, they would literally, so I think the consistency comment is really important. So staying consistent with whatever your sleep schedule is going to be will make a world of difference. For many people, I know the challenge sometimes is that once they finally get home, they're like overtired and it's hard to go to sleep. So I think creating an environment that allows you to get sleep. So somehow you have to train your body to assimilate the nighttime, which I know is very difficult, but over a period of time, your body will adjust. And I mean, I think the reality, so I worked at a point from 7 at night to 7 in the morning. And it really is that witching hour between, I want to say maybe between 4, like 3 and 5, that is really hard. And those are the times that I had to stay on my feet and stay moving. So, I think certainly setting up a schedule for sleep and an environment when you're going to be sleeping is key. But I think it also matters that when you are on the job, that those hours that you start to feel that drain and you start to feel that sluggish and you start to feel warm in your chair, like that's the time you need to get up and get moving.
I want to add something on that too. You just reminded me of something actually. There was one day, actually, you just reminded me of something. I'm still on the job, so let me just give me a minute. I'm thinking if I should share this story. I mean, it's not the end of the world because I was very active. If you ask people, I was always moving around. So I'm not being hypocritical here. People actually to the point where they said I was rather annoying. But there was one moment where it was winter, and I was working on my second double, and it was about maybe 3:30, 4 in the morning, and I was told to go into a vehicle to get ready to prepare for an early morning food service move, and I put the heat on in the car, and yeah, I mean, however it concludes, but don't do that. You know what I mean? I think that's actually very specific advice there, but just don't do that. Don't that heat, once. And again, I was ordered to go into the vehicle. I'd rather have stayed outside in the cold. But going into that heated car after that second double. And the thing is, guys, I really can't complain either because I chose to work that schedule. That's another thing. When you get mandated, again, you got to stay alert, but maybe it's not a day you expected. I needed to prepare myself because that was my schedule. So God forbid, so that's on me because I knew I was walking into that. So by the way, guys, if you're working third shift, you got to prepare yourself for that. Like Andy said, and it's a tough adjustment, but never allow yourself to get into a pattern where you find that downtime that puts you out. You need to get yourself in a pattern to keep yourself awake. Marty had a great question I wanted to get to. I just got to find it, guys. I wanted to get to it, but I wind up clicking to. Oh no, I'm sorry. It's Derek. It's a question for Connie. We just answered Marty's question actually. Let me just get to Derek's question real quick because there it goes. But there was also a piece of advice. I'll get to that. But so Connie, this question will go to you first. But I also think that from a custody perspective, we could maybe answer some of this. But I want to give it to Connie because the question really is directed to her. So Connie, which is the person in the middle now. Connie, working in medical, how did you know an inmate was serious about medical or just trying to get attention? How should this be handled?
So in medical, there are assessments for everything. So if an inmate comes down for medical and they're complaining of a headache, like they are going to be assessed for that headache. We do thorough reviews of their health, any of their health records, any information we can get from the community as it comes into a facility. But any inmate comes down, we have a protocol for just about everything. And there is an assessment that's done for just about everything. And we can rule out those inmates who are malingering. We pick them up out the bunch all the time. I think a lot of times you've got that persistent inmate who's kind of in the unit telling the officer, I need to get the medical. And, they're having all inmates know chest pain is a trigger. suicidality is a trigger. So like they know the keywords that are going to get them to medical. And many times the officer will just send the inmate over. A lot of times what we do to make sure that that doesn't happen is that we'll say, I'll send a nurse over. Right. And then they'll get checked out. Usually in some facilities, depending on the layout, there may be a private space, a day room, whatever, wherever they can go to just do a quick evaluation of an inmate to see what's going on. But that's pretty much what we do. We do an assessment just to rule out whatever the primary complaint is. And then whatever the secondary gain is, it usually gets shut down, because the more we give into the secondary gain, the more we have this practice that we don't want to encourage. And then at times where we think that the inmate just wants to get out the unit and go for a walk, to come over to medical for whatever issue they're having, we try to make sure we get over there to address the issue, as opposed to giving the inmate access to the walkway or access to the medical unit. And we're very good with having those conversations with custody, right? And if an inmate was seen multiple times, we try to proactively give that information to the officer in the unit to say, John Doe was seen twice already today. Not to say that we're not going to address the issue if they call a third time, because we'd hate for the third time to be a charm. But, we want to make sure that whatever it is the inmate is trying to get at, that we're not given that opportunity just because we're naive to the game that they might be playing. So medical is usually pretty on board and aware of the inmates who are malingering. We do have protocols in place just to, make sure we dot our I's and cross our T's. And outside of that, it is open communication with custody to make sure that this doesn't continue. You're mute.
Right. Hey. So there's a few questions that relate to Connie's, but I still think me and Russ can add something to this, and then we'll get to Andy's question because that feeds off. But I wanted to show this, guys, real quick, so we're all familiar with this, and maybe this can add into what Russ wants to say. But JM says, when an inmate is grinning in your face and says the word chest pain's the worst. Obviously, we know that there's always that conflict between the universal precaution, which is, if it could be the truth. The inmate could really have chest pains, even though we know we're faking it. The boy that cries wolf has to be answered every time, and the motivation behind it. Maybe there's a nurse on shift that they want to see, or whatever that is. And there has to be a way to balance that. But I will tell you one thing, guys: you can't ignore it. You cannot ignore it. The boy that cries wolf has to be answered every time. So go ahead, Russ. What do you got?
So yeah, you're absolutely right. Do we have to respond to it? Yes, we do. We can also, though, change the way that we respond to it. And medical knows this as well. They can change the way they respond to it too. That inmate, maybe you do have to get him up there to medical or whatever, but where he's going to be seen, when he's going to be seen, where he's going to have to wait in the interim, once they've had a chance to rule out that maybe it's something life-threatening or not, and they maybe have to go a little bit deeper into that. It doesn't have to be a walk in the park for an inmate, and it doesn't have to be comfortable, and it doesn't have to be padded lounge chairs and things like that. They can be put into a position where it's simply not worth the effort. And so that's kind of like, where you have to start, retrenching and figuring out what it is that you're going to do for an inmate. And then once all of these things are said and done, medical can make the determination at some point whether or not this inmate is faking. And then if he's faking, he should be written up and then, have to suffer whatever consequences for that particular action. But as far as the response goes, we just change it up and put him in a position where it's just not comfortable to have the response that he was counting on.
Yeah, by the way, Dr. Z, and I believe Dr. Z is on the other side of the world, those who cry wolf should be charged. Yeah, that's where your partnership comes with medical. If the inmate has told you they have chest pains and, maybe they discover a routine or some level of motivation, you could work with medical, and maybe medical can help you formulate a charge that's really well written. But again, you're looking at routine behavior. So they may get it off one or two times, maybe, but after that, if you could start seeing that there's a routine and the routine and context can be explained in a report, go ahead and use it, and then explain that on the charge, and then start hitting up the inmate for the live, because and also for disrupting the orderly running of the facility, because every time you're taking them to medical, it's pulling you away from what you got to do. It's pulling medical staff from away from what they got to do. So 100%. But again, it's not something you're going to get the first or second time. It's something that you're going to have to prove. So again, take a note of it, which medical should be doing through their electronic management system or medical records. They'll take note of it, and then maybe they will also discover a pattern. Like, how come they're only doing it at this time? They seem to only have an issue at this time. But again, when you write that report, you have to write in that report the pattern that you have discovered that will help in context to support that charge. But again, you have to answer it every time. There's no ifs and buts, because if you miss it, doesn't matter if you saved the inmate 99 times before. All they're going to care about is the one time that it was ignored. But I like what Russ said, if I can just add on that, is that some of the stuff we do is predictable because it's by policy and procedure, and inmates are going to know that, and they're going to kind of try to maneuver that. But how you respond to it, there may be be inventive if need be. I like what Russ said. I mean, it may not be you're going to get seen right away. It may be a little bit of a delay today. Of course, making sure that, the inmate's okay, of course, but maybe it is tying them up, and maybe it keeps them in the hospital for quite some time and they miss that phone call with their family. I mean, again, they're disrupting what we have to do. So maybe you missed that family phone call today because what should have been a 5-minute checkup, but since you've been playing games all day, turns out to be the 8 hours of my shift. Now you can stay in medical, and, and I'll talk to the nurses and we'll work together as one. But guys, when it comes to an inmate playing the game medical, we have to still do what's expected of us. But there could be a partnership between you and medical that can do your best to make sure there's some level of inconvenience if the inmate decides to do that again. Now, there's a second part to Derek's question that comes in from Andy, and I thought it was a good question. So I want to go ahead and toss that over to Connie first. But Connie, real quick, but do you agree, and real quick, with that partnership there, especially if the inmate is playing games because they're motivated, maybe it's for a move or to see somebody?
The partnership is critical. I don't think we have a choice in the matter as it relates to the partnership. It's really important that as we identify these issues in our system or these nuances, that we figure out the best way to handle them and that we're on the same page with it. Because the last thing you want is for this situation to cause a divide, right? Or for it to be seen as custody isn't supporting medical or medical isn't supporting custody. And I mean, I think we all agree that, no one can, you can't refuse to see the person, right? Which kind of leads into the second part of the question that you threw up there about whether or not, if an inmate is faking, if they're faking an injury, if you can refuse, and there's never a time that we can refuse. We just have to rule out there that it is or isn't a true injury. And usually there are telltale signs, right, that there is a true injury. Whether we have to measure the quote unquote injury, if there's bruising, if there is no bruising, is there discoloration, is there swelling, is there no swelling? There's like so many things that we would look for that we would know for certain this is a fake injury or an old injury that maybe they didn't tell us about when it first happened. And now, because it may have created a security issue, right? Like they don't want anyone to know that they were fighting. Now, here it is 3 days later, we're seeing an injury that's healing, right? And so we would still address the issue, but we would definitely make sure that, custody is aware that there was an issue in play and, now it's healing. So I think, to answer that question, if someone is faking an injury, we have a way of knowing that they're faking it or not. And if there's something that we find that's, of question or of note, we typically would partner with custody and bring it to their attention so that they're aware that there was an injury, which means that there probably was a fight. There was something that transpired that probably should be under investigation.
Yeah, and that kind of touches into what we kind of talked about when it comes to them faking the chest pains. Just make sure you're properly documenting it, and then once a pattern's been discovered, then you could start focusing on those charges, and then use the pattern of behavior on the reports to support the charge time. And that's where you and medical can work out, because even though it's their medical record, um, because there's a safety and security concern, you're not getting specifics of what their medical concern is, but rather the time and dates. The pattern comes from the time and dates. And at that point, that's not a HIPAA violation. That's just more of, hey, medical, can you do me a favor? Can you give me the time and dates that the inmate's been here over the last week? I'm going to need it because, we're getting ready to write up a charge for an inmate who's faking medical concerns. So again, that's definitely a partnership between you and medical, and hopefully those that are medical that are watching this can see how important that is for us to get that, because that also helps you guys too. While you guys are, getting tied up with that one inmate, let us help, and maybe we could write the charge. Sometimes, guys, in some facilities, the service providers don't write the charges. They expect custody to, and in some cases, we can too, or they can. But either way, a good partnership definitely helps to support what needs to be done. Okay, guys. So as we start to wrap up, we could take one more question, and I see a few. So we'll take the last question that comes from Derek, and it's directed to me and Russ. For Anthony and Russ, is there any use of force that you remember most that you're able to share for a new recruit? So, and also, I'm also going to put Connie on this, because don't forget, guys, as medical, they're going to be responding to a lot of those use of force. So maybe we could discuss maybe Connie's first experience seeing what's never pretty. But Russ, what do you got first on this, Russ?
Okay, so I'm trying to think of something that will be instructive to think about, and I guess if I'm going to reach back into my cranium and dig one out, I think I'm going to dig out one where I was sucker punched, and I'll never forget that use of force, because what happened was I had my back to a fence, and I had an inmate standing probably about 5 or 6 feet in front of me, and he was asking me some questions. And another inmate came up from the side, and I thought he was going to ask me a question. And I didn't know this inmate from Adam. And anyway, he just hauled off and struck me as hard as he could in the left side of my face. And what ended up happening is when he struck me, it tore part of my cornea, or at least the sclera around my eye. And he started to come past me. And right then I knew that I was probably in trouble. And this particular one was really kind of bad, because unbeknownst to me, I was supposed to have a gunner above me with lethal force options, supposed to have a H&K model 94. And he had gone inside the tier to visit. And I didn't realize I was alone on that yard with about 250, 300 inmates. But I did manage to grab the guy's wrist, and I managed to spin him around, and I managed to actually, believe it or not, man, I've been doing some fun training at that point in my life, and I managed to come back and clothesline him as I pulled him around. And we went down on the ground, and fortunately I could see that no other inmates rushed me. So I kind of, pulled him in as tight as I could, and I started working my hand around. I was able to get to my whistle, because I wasn't able to get to my my radio at that time. And so I started blowing my whistle, and I had good response out there. And when people responded at that point, I realized that the inmate was kind of out of it. And so that was good. I really kind of acquitted myself pretty well in that particular attack. And the only bad thing was I had to spend a couple days off while that healed off. It wasn't that bad of a thing. I do remember, though, we had actually, a while back, we did a video where I told this story. And this was about, the times I was victimized in prison versus the times I was victimized as a civilian. And, I remember time went by and no one really said anything, and I wasn't thinking about much. And the investigation sergeant came and said, hey, sorry to tell you this, but Marin County District Attorney decided that they're not going to prosecute. And I said, well, I wasn't sure that they ever did. And he goes, oh, no, they never do. Right. Nobody contacted me, told me anything about it. Not even my own institution. Right. And the district attorney didn't bother to call me. All he did was make a phone call back to that. And so, I thought that was just the way things went. And so maybe at some further point, we'll talk more about the difference between being a victim in the real world as a civilian and from the inside as just being a correctional officer.
I think that would be a great topic. Hey, Connie, I know obviously in medical, you're also on the other end of that use of force. I mean, what was your thoughts when you first either responded to a situation because your medical attention was immediate, or on the back end of it all?
So the response side of it, of course, is, I don't think there's anything that could prepare you for your first use of force, for what you're going to see when you come on the scene. I think even just the chaos surrounding it, right? Like, all the moving parts, everyone involved has report writing to do. Emotions are still really high. There's just a whole lot happening. I think from the perspective of just medical stabilization, seeing the nurses jump into action, being able to support whatever their needs are, because from an administrative perspective, it's really trying to document sort of the happenings, what, not necessarily just a timetable, but who did what, right? Because like for us, we're usually assessing, were all the steps followed in the protocol? If something wasn't followed, knowing that we need to prepare a justification for why something wasn't followed. But I mean, there's emotions that are involved also, right? So aside from just the chaos of things, like, I mean, I happened to be in the corridor when there was an exchange and I heard the inmate's head hit the floor. And the first thing I thought was concussion. I thought, is he alive? I thought, how do we stabilize this, right? Like, okay, hopefully everyone, when, once the code is called, everyone comes running with everything that we actually need. And at the time, I'm also concerned that, is there enough, like, do we have all the supplies we need in the bag, right? In the emergency response bag. So it's like all this stuff that happens that in the midst of it all, you still have to keep a cool mind, a level head. You still got, the documentation that you're required to do. And then still be able to be supportive of the nurses, right? Like supportive that, they're doing their best to stabilize the inmate, and even support the officer if the officer is injured in the moment, because we do that as well. And then once, paramedics or whoever comes from outside and they take the inmate off and the officer goes into an emergency room, like our job is kind of technically done, but it's not, because it's kind of ongoing. We're still writing reports and we're still doing our best to make sure like we're reflecting exactly what transpired during that event. It's just a tough thing to watch. And, I take my hat off to you officers who like endure that every day, right? Because for me, it's like a once in a while happening, whereas it's just an everyday reality of the jobs you guys do. So, yeah.
There was one this is definitely the last question, and then we do got to call it quits. And by the way, thank you guys for taking your time out of your day and joining us. Obviously, we couldn't have a show without you, especially couldn't have a show without Derek today. Just joking there. But and by the way, guys, the questions matter because it gives us a chance to learn more, because again, we don't know what sometimes we don't realize what we know until someone asks us the question, or sometimes we realize what we don't know when someone asks the question. So either way, we're very motivated to find the answers. I just want to it was sent by Limp Bizkit. Yeah. All right, guys. I do want to answer this question because this does relate to the first day. So it's like the bonus question at the end. I'm very big on this question. So maybe I'll attack this one first and I'll give it to Russ and Connie. But I will keep it brief, guys. But this is a very important question. Guys, so how should a CO handle write-up? Should a CO write up all infractions, or is that excessive? On your first day on the job, you haven't really developed discretion or experience, and you got to set that highest level. So you're probably going to write up a lot of things because most of the time you're being tested. And the supervisor should expect that at the very beginning. So if you're a supervisor, you have, some new boots up there, expect the write-ups. They're setting their precedents. They're going to be saying a lot of no's. And I get that. That's 100% because you're discovering your path. But that's kind of like the best way to avoid being played. Then eventually, as you start developing discretion, you can ease back and find out other ways to experience of how you can handle certain situations, because not everything's meant for a write-up. And by the way, guys, we're talking about minor things. I'm sure that's what Limp Bizkit's getting at, because that in the end, guys, is you have to set the authority in the unit. And sometimes when you write up somebody, it pushes the authority over to the supervisor, especially for the little things. And as you start developing time in the system, the supervisor is not there to run your unit. At that point, they're expecting you to handle stuff through discretion. Now, don't get me wrong. You could have inmates that continually to do foolish things. And again, you're collecting, those behaviors, and eventually you may pile it up and say, listen, I've tried talking to this inmate 20 times. It's not working. Call the supervisor, take the next step. But we would like to see an effort, again, for non-emergent things. We're talking about non-emergent things. So again, until you develop discretion, then yes, you're going to write up things like crazy. But as you start to find your way, you may want to find other ways to handle things that put the power in you and not to the supervisor. So the write-ups may be what I would consider a last resort, because in the end, you want to be seen as effective. And the supervisors also want you to be effective. They want to know that when they're out of the unit, that you're running it and that you don't need them. Now, that's my thoughts on that. And again, really does relate to the first day, but I would love to see what Russ's thoughts on that, and then Connie's.
Okay, so there is an element to that where, yeah, the new guy, that's kind of like the only tool that he's got in his kit, right? Because he hasn't developed, communication and all these other things. But at the same time, that can be a sucker move, because what happens is you get bogged down in dealing with infractions and misdemeanors rather than finding felonies, right? I always felt about myself that I didn't have time to deal with infractions because there were misdemeanors and felonies happening, and I should be on the warpath for those. That was my own personal credo. That was the way that I looked at it. And there's a point at which you can look at it too as just how is it that you're maintaining discipline within your area? Are you having to rely on paperwork? Because if you're relying on paperwork, you're not really being effective. You ought to be able to, have that command presence and that ability to communicate in ways that make the inmates comply to a certain level. Now, you're not going to stop them from doing things behind your back, but you can do the things where they're at least, keeping some of their house in order. So you have to look at it from that perspective. I felt that when I wrote paper, people were going to lose time, or they were going to go to the hole, right? Or to add seg, as we call it. And so if you think that it's possible to go in there and maintain things with a sheet of paper, you're just wrong. There has to be an element of your personality in there. There has to be an element of your command presence. If you don't have it, you need to develop it. And last but not least, that ability to communicate with inmates. There's some inmates that are going to be more obstinate than others, and there's going to be those that you can, meld and bend to your will without having to rely on that paper. And I suggest that you develop as many things on your tool belt, with regards to communication, command presence, all those other things, that allows you to reach out and have a much further reach than just trying to pencil whip everything into place.
Sorry, I love that, Russ. I want to get Connie's thoughts on this, because I know Connie actually owns a school, guys. It's a Civilians Corrections Academy, so I'm sure this definitely does come up, because there are some civilians that are in a position to write up an inmate. I mean, what's your thoughts on writing every charge? I mean, what's your opinion?
So I don't think the pen should undermine your authority. And I think that you have to pick and choose or use your discretion as far as, what infractions you're going to write up. Writing up every single one just is not effective. Um, and I think with that, I have to lean on Russ's point about making sure, about understanding that right now the pen is, as a new boot, the pen is sort of the only recourse that you may have confidence in because you still haven't built other skills, the ability to communicate well and, establish a presence, establish the respect, build that confidence and such. So, I wouldn't be in support of writing everything up all the time. I think also it's finding that balance and understanding that ignoring it is also sending a message, right? So there has to be, if you're not going to write up, there has to be another action that you take so it doesn't seem as though your silence is given the okay. You don't want that to be the interpretation of you not taking an action. So if you're going to speak on it, you're going to deal with the inmate one-on-one. That's one thing. And then writing it up, I think that's when it gets to the point where I'm not saying that you should allow everything to build up. That is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is there are some infractions that are minor that don't need to be written up. That doesn't mean you don't take note of them. And when something big actually comes up, you can then pull all of those things into that conversation or into that document so that it's a well documented sort of write up that gives a history. It's not like I'm just writing you up now, but here are all the things that took place before we got to this point of a write up. So I think just be strategic about those write ups because you do want to make sure that you're utilizing your time wisely.
And Connie made a very good point, guys. I forgot to add that. Obviously, if you're not writing it up, you still want to document those interactions because that's what's going to give you the, your progressive discipline. As I believe that was Dr. Z Justin Marty. That's what gives you that progressive discipline. Now, guys, remember, before we come to a close, we have our final thoughts. We're going to be doing this every Tuesday night from 9, about 10, 10:30. So please let people know the live interactions are so we can interact with the audience and, see what questions are out there. And also Tier Talk will release a video every Thursday, but that's not going to be a live video. That's just going to be our normal 15-minute to 30-minute discussion on whatever the topic is for the day. I would like to say that next week, the theme, because today's theme, and we pretty much focused on it, I believe, was the what you should expect on your first day working in a prison or jail. And we kind of got into more of what we should expect from ourselves, but still something. For next week, what I would like to do and try to focus on dealing with confrontational inmates, whether they're passive aggressive, violent, or just verbal. I think that's a topic that covers that we get asked a lot that I think is very important. And then we'll try to focus our dialogue on that. Hey, Connie, do you have anything you want to say in closing?
I just want to say it was really good having this exchange. I think being able to engage and have our brothers and sisters ask us questions this is like the reward, right? Like years of service, and you're able to give back. So I appreciate being able to be on a panel and to give feedback. If my experiences can help to save someone's career, to help keep someone safe, by all means, I will pour into the channel for as long as I can.
And by the way, we love having you, Connie. We've been, doing this now for years now. And now we also have Russ Hamilton. Russ, anything you'd like to say in closing?
Yeah, it's just great to be able to appear on a show like this. The reason that I started the things that I did, like with Keepers of Chaos, is because I just want to bring my best to a profession that I love. And it's a profession that's, often, neglected. Nobody thinks about us. Nobody knows we exist. And they really miss out because they don't understand the amount of bravery and dedication and sacrifice that it takes to be a working corrections professional. And so, want to give a big shout out to all those people up there. I see Dr. Smith there right again. I know he's been following us for a while, and people like Steve Maynard and other ones, keep the questions coming. And we just want to be able to answer as much as we can as we go through this process of starting this thing every Tuesday night. And I just want to be able to, teach people and help further their career in any way I can. That's my passion, and I love all you guys out there.
All right, guys. And my closing thoughts are, well, first, let me just say thank you to Guardian RFID and American Military University. Guys, if you get a chance, check out guardianrfid.com. Also, check out American Military University if you're looking to seek a higher education. Because, guys, we need more people in the profession to go ahead and travel up to those educational levels and teach those, those young people, mold their minds and what we need, because we're, can't expect professors who never walked the walk to get the right information out there. It's got to come from us. And also, one last thing, my closing thought I'm actually going to take from Dr. J, or Dr. Z, I'm sorry. Hey, Dr. Z, I'm stealing your closing thought. Where is it? All right, so my closing thought today is going to be from Dr. Z Smith. God bless all our past and current brothers and sisters for your service, police corrections, a challenge one day, an adventure the next. I just love that. As always, guys, the show is Tear Talk. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. Please stay safe.